Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Schlage number L496L with an 09-509 thumb turn, an L583-363 occupancy indicator, and a satin chrome finish. And this video will go over a visual review of the material, of its contents. We'll go over the installation instructions. We'll look at the template. We'll talk about this occupancy indicator, why it's an L lock, and etc. Actually, let's just start off with why it's an L lock. The L in the part number means that we are providing the lock less a core, less a cylinder. And that was done because this client has an unusual application where they've taken a typical 1 3/4 thick door and they have, I think they've added 1 inch to the exterior side of the opening. Actually, I can tell you what they've done. Okay, let's look. That is exactly what the client did. They added to the egress, well, actually, it's probably the ingress side, the exterior or the secure side of the opening. They've added a 1/4 inch of furring material and then 3/4 inch worth of drywall. So they've taken an 1 3/4 thick door, then added 1 inch on the outside. So let's say that the standard cylinder is 1 1/4. Could be 1 1/8. You could probably make 1 inch work as well. But let's say it's 1 1/4 standard. What we did for the client was custom manufacture a couple of cylinders that are 2 1/4 inch length, and that extra 1 inch is just simply meant to compensate for the thicker application on the exterior side. These custom length mortise cylinders are something that we provide. We can manufacture them in lots of different lengths for you. Okay. And ultimately would prove to be the ideal solution for this application. Okay. So we've got the client with a tapered collar with a wave washer underneath. Given the fact that they're adding 1 inch, that 1 1/4, could be a little smaller. Could certainly use one a little longer if you wanted to add a trim ring or a cylinder collar. Having the ability with that wave washer to kind of tailor exactly where that's installed in terms of the projection from the door is the purpose of this collar. So that's why this is an L after the L496. It's an L lock because it's an L series lock. Let's switch to the screen view so we can take a look at what the client supplied. So this is the drawing of what the client supplied, and let's take a closer look at this before it gets a bit muddy that we can't really see the dimensions anymore. The point is here's your 1 3/4. We've got a furring strip or a trim piece of 1/4 inch and then the 3/4 inch. And that cylinder, the lock itself is going to be centered in the door thickness. Okay, so it's going to be centered right inside of here. So again, we're just adding 1 inch because we're literally adding 1 inch to the exterior side. That's where that came from. And that thumb turn will be on the inside. Okay. Now, because we've got that occupancy indicator, however, we're going to need to give that some special attention as well for the length of the item. So let's continue on with our review, and we'll ultimately get to what we did with the occupancy indicator. Now, continuing on with our review of the unit itself, what we're looking at here is, of course, the business end, the lock body itself. Okay, this is just a mortise style deadbolt is what it is, and this is the L496. And the L496 inherently means occupancy indicator model, and this is the body. Let's take a couple of basic dimensional properties. Actually, maybe to put it into a little bit better context, here is its armor front. So that's what it's going to look like. You've got Schlage, you've got the UL stamp, which means that this is a listed product. It also means that it is with the capital F and lowercase f. This is both positive and negative or neutral pressure negative pressure rated. And the capital F, I believe, refers to, I forget the case, I believe it might be uppercase F means positive pressure and lowercase f means neutral pressure. The fact of the matter is it's compliant with both. I just forget which upper or lowercase identifies them. I believe uppercase is neutral pressure, is what I believe it to be. So here's the lock body. This is going to have a 2 3/4 inch back set, okay, on your installation. The armor front's not included there, but if it was, it'd be right at 2 3/4. The overall height of the case, about 3 5/8. The depth of the case to the edge of the unit looks like it's about 4 5/16. Thickness of the body, about 7/8 of an inch. This is going to have a overall height, and we'll just reference the armor front for that, of about 5, and when we look at the template, we'll verify it, but it looks like it's just heavy on 5.5, and that'll be 1 1/4 wide. Okay. This will also include its strike plate, is what it also includes. Let's take a look at that. A couple of combination wood machine screws are going to be included with that. That'll work in a hollow metal frame, 1224 flat undercut head screw with a wood thread feature to the tip of it. So it will go into a wood frame or a steel frame. It's going to incorporate its dust box, and you will always want to install the dust box as well because it finishes off the opening. Okay. That strike appears to be stainless steel. About 3.5 inch tall, and its width about 1 1/8. Okay. We're going to have the thumb turn, and this is an ADA compliant thumb turn. We have our thumb turn, which again, it's an 09-509. That's the standard thumb turn. This is the ADA compliant thumb turn, so the part number becomes 09-509 by L583-363. The client was unsure if this was going to be ADA compliant. We saw no reason not to automatically make it the ADA style compatible thumb turn. Okay, and there it is. Now, where does the occupancy, and a couple of screws naturally for getting that installed, that key stock is just small on 3/16 by 3/16, which we'll actually go over. The question becomes is where does the occupancy indicator come into play? And where it comes into play is literally buried inside of the part number L496. If you needed a single cylinder deadbolt, just regular, just standard, like this is a single cylinder deadbolt, it'd just be an L460. But when you say that it is L496, then it means it comes with the occupancy indicator, which means every time the thumb turn is thrown on the inside, that's strange, what's going on here? Okay, so yeah, so what we're saying here is the standard position of the occupancy indicator is just blank. Again, when you order a L496, you will get the occupancy indicator. This is the tailpiece that comes with the lock, and actually the way that they send it is with a number of different lengths of these plastic tail pieces that you just break off for the door thickness. Well, what they've sent us here is too short for our needs by probably 1 inch. So we're going to talk about the accommodation that we've made for the longer spindle or key stock for this. That would be too short to overcome our 1 inch to get to the inside of the door. But the L496 means, regardless of the hand, when you rotate the inside thumb turn, you're going to have occupied displayed. Okay, either way that you rotate that, it's going to show occupied displayed. Okay, that's how that's going to work. The longest of these will accommodate a door thickness of up to 2 5/8. And while our door is 2 3/4 thick, we don't have it we're not balancing the installation of the lock case in the center of that 2 3/4. It would be pretty close, but since we are offsetting it, we're installing it unequally inside the door. We're going to need a longer spindle, which we're going to go over. Your cylinder on the outside is obviously going to go through this unit completely, and this is where the cylinder collar will probably not be necessary at all, because that's just going to fit inside of there altogether. Going to look like that on the outside. Okay. And the length of the cylinder that we've used here is actually going to be quite ideal for this door thickness. It won't, you know, they're not going to end up using this tapered collar, would be my guess, at all, because, again, if we had a standard cylinder of 1 1/4, we get to the, what would be the face of the door to the back of the cam. We're basically at 1 7/8. So if you needed, you know, if the 1 3/4 thick door, it would be 7/8 from the face of the door to the center of the thickness of the door to make 1 3/4. Then you add your collar, 1 1/8, 1 1/4, you know, mortise cylinder thickness. This is going to work out ideally because we're adding 1 inch. So 1 inch plus the 7/8 to get to the center of the body, which you won't really need to. And they may be able to use this because what that's taking up is probably just maybe a 1/4 inch total. They may ultimately end up using that collar. It's hard to say. But nonetheless, there you go. So that explains the occupancy indicator, the extended length spindles that come with it. Then the final thing that's included is just going to be installation instructions. You're going to get a couple of screws for the armor front to hold that onto the lock case. You're going to get screws for the lock case itself here, and then the template and the installation instructions, which we're going to now go over. We're going to go over the template, the installation instructions, and the cut sheet from the manufacturer, and we'll switch to the screen view to go over those aspects. So let's do so now. Now what we're going to continue with is a brief overview of the product brochure, of the service manual, of the installation instructions, and the template. So the product brochure is going to be an overview of the L series mechanical locks, and you know, we're dealing with just, you know, we're dealing with the L496, so I'm just going to scroll right to it. On this page, we're going to have the other small case mortise deadlocks. Like I said, the L460 is just the standard single cylinder, with an L462 being a double cylinder. The classroom version is the L463, and that will allow you to throw the deadbolt from the outside or retract it with the key. But on the inside, you can only retract the deadbolt. And that's in case someone were to get unintentionally locked in the bathroom, you can always exit. This would be the L464 is obviously a cylinder only on one side. Okay, that may be appropriate for a closet, you know, where there's be no one on the inside of that door whatsoever. Then we get to the L480, which is the opposite of an L464 in the fact that it's a thumb turn only. This would be like an exit only function, or an exit function where there's no possible way to come back in. Then our L496, deadbolt with occupied indicator, deadbolt actuated by key or the thumb turn. When deadbolt is thrown, the occupied message is displayed. Otherwise, it's blank, as we had indicated earlier. As we continue to scroll through, we'll go back to where our functions were on page 84. That part of the catalog, which you can go through, is the other L-series functions, which are the full-size lock sets. If we get to the second instance of where the L496 comes into play, it's really just a reference to the blocking ring that you would use with a full-size interchangeable core. So they're basically saying these are the size thicknesses that you would need based on these door thicknesses: 1/2 inch, 3/8, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. And the same application is shown here. It's on the same page for small format variant is what it is. Small format is SF full size, or the Schlage large format is FS for full size. So that, that's going to cover the manual itself, the product brochure. We can type in the 09-509 by L583 363, and that will come up. And this will show us both our standard thumb turn and our ADA thumb turn. Okay, that would be on the interior of the unit. Now you can use, variations on this material. If you wanted to have a coin turn on the outside of a deadbolt, you could have that. You would order it less cylinder, would be my would be my guess. And that would give you the ability to do that. If you needed a deadbolt, a small format, a small mortise case deadbolt with a thumb turn on the inside, you could have a coin turn on the exterior. This emergency button wouldn't apply. That would cover a hole in order for you to get in with an emergency key. Although you could make that work as well. Ligature resistant turn could be used. Then you could do a cylinder turn, and this is nothing other than a mortise cylinder turn. You could use that, however, that is the classroom version, but nonetheless, you could install a mortise cylinder thumb turn in lieu of these thumb turns that feature key stock and then are surface applied with screws. 09-509, let's see where else it shows up. It just shows up in other areas because it's a standard thumb turn on its own. Okay. What else? What other part number that we have in our part number is, so the L496 we've discussed. We've discussed the 09-509 with the L583 363. Let's look at what that little L there means. We talked about it earlier being less cylinder, but there are additional options that can be, additional variables that can be put there. Schlage cylinder suffix guide, and we'll talk more about that page I was just on. L, less conventional cylinder. Okay, as you use these different suffixes, you can obtain different modifications to the lock as it pertains to the cylinder. The P, of course, is the most common, which means it's going to come with a standard typical cylinder, but you can do other variations on this, such as small format, less the core, full size, core with a core, full size, less the core, etc. Okay, plastic construction core for small format would be the BDC. Now that means we've dissected this part number. This lock is not handed, although you always want to include the hand of your lock when ordering. It's considered best practice. The 626 is the finish. Now that's going to mean that we're going to be able to do lots of finishes on these locks. Suffice it to say, Schlage is going to offer your chromes, your nickels, your brasses, your bronze, oil rubbed, satin polished, things of that nature, powder coated finishes, and they will certainly entertain custom requests or special order requests as well. You can order this material in powder coat black. It would be a factory order, but can be done. AWS simply means all wood screws. I knew that this client was using a wood door and a wood frame, so it would be considered best practice, again, to specify all wood screws. And then, of course, the manufacturer at the end. So we've covered the product brochure. Let's talk about now this service manual next. Now the service manual that we have here, what we'll do is we'll just scroll through it with the matches to the L496 that we have here. L496, the first reference gives us a Just a description of the function along with the occupancy indicator. It's nice that it gives you the part number for the lock case only over here, L283-099. The second instance gets us to where we can see an exploded parts drawing of these lock bodies. Well, pardon me. It gives us a parts drawing of the assembly of the item itself. And because we have an unusual door thickness, it's that H part that we're going to illustrate later as to what exactly it is that we did to the lock itself. And as we look here, we can see the items associated with our product. All the items that we've done a visual review on. Because it was an L version, there is no cylinder included. Okay. And on the following page, there will be a breakdown of what those lettered parts are that we see here. So that's also handy as well. We'll also tell you with the dot what is required for that lock. If there's a dot, it's required. If there's a numeral, then you need 2 of those, that particular line item. As we scroll through, now we're going to get into the exploded parts drawing of the L283-099. Okay, so if you needed any serviceable parts from that lock case, this is the page where you'd be able to find them. The spring, the turn hub spring, that's not uncommon. You put a few million cycles through a lock, and that spring is certainly going to fatigue. That's typical. I mean, but I see that at several million cycles of heavy usage on lock sets. The next instance of it will show you the driver bars, or the breakaway driver bars, included with your occupancy indicator. And again, all of these are too short for our application. But that will be coming up in a bit here in this video. Take a further look at subcomponents. The armor front can be purchased separately. The armor front for the L496 can be an 09215 or an 09717. There may be a cost difference, so if you do not need the UL version, don't order it. In fact, if you don't need the UL version, don't order it. You don't want to go about putting UL labeled parts on doors that are non-UL. It'll just cause confusion if you're under the scrutiny of a fire door audit. Will also come in to play in terms of talking about the length of the cylinder. And as I had said earlier, 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/8. Well, indeed, that cylinder is a 30-001, and that would be 1 1/8 would be the length of the cylinder. Really, regardless of the door thickness, up to 2 1/4. And really, all you're going to play with there is just the trim ring that you might ultimately have to use. Blocking ring and/or compression rings may be required and must be ordered separately. Okay, so you can do different door thicknesses. Same thing here, showing you blocking rings that you may use with full-size core blocking rings. And that would be a reference to full-size interchangeable core. Is what that would be. Same scenario down here for small format, which would be Best compatible. Best and its clones. The clones of Best. Best doesn't have any clones. Lubrication specifications. This is awfully nice because it will allow you to understand, while servicing the lock, okay, where those points of lubrication would occur. So they're looking at B is going to be the point of lubrication on an L496, and that is going to be the area in which the bolt comes in and out of. Lock case and case cover, apply 150 milligrams minimum at each lubrication area. Super handy when maintaining these locks. Super, super handy. As we continue through, now we're going to get to installation instructions, which we'll cover next. And that exhausts everything in the service manual. And here we are at the installation instructions. And, first they're going to obviously define what it all looks like what all of the parts are called. They're going to show you, this would be, all the possible parts that you may end up using in the entire series. But then you're just going to jump to those sections that apply. You're obviously going to mortise the door for the lock case. Be mindful that the cylinder goes above the thumb turn. Okay, if you have the occupancy indicator L496, use the correct driver bar. We're going to custom make our driver bar coming up next. Once the occupancy indicator is in, you'll obviously bring your cylinder to the party. There is a set screw that is kind of shown in here, and your access to it is through this hole. You're going to want to draw the yoke back, and then actually we can take a look at that part. Right here. Okay, it's all of part 10 and part 55. You're going to want to turn that to draw the yoke back. Well, what do they call part 55? They call it a cylinder retainer. So you'll draw that back so you can then thread the cylinder into the lock case. Then, once you have it in and you have the key in the proper orientation, you can then go about tightening that, which would be, it's not mentioned to until you get to step 4. Bring your thumb turn, attach that, tighten your cylinder, unless you have a double cylinder. Okay. Then apply your armor front. Now, the term armor front is interesting because in the 19th century, the early 20th century, you could easily have bought mortise locks that did not feature an armor front. So an armor front on your lock case. Here's your mortise lock. The armor front is really a piece of applied architectural material outside of here. So you could also buy, in those old-fashioned mortise locks, you could have bought them with a solid piece on the outside. It's the same thickness here to here, basically. But with the models that do not feature an armor front, you would see the screw, well, it would be over here. You would see the screw for the cylinder here. You would see the screw that holds the lock body into the door here and here. And quite frankly, it would be not impossible to tamper with or otherwise bypass the security of the lock when you have access to this screw. You could loosen this, remove your cylinder, and then operate the lock. Well, the conversion to an armor front style of construction, now with that applied plate, I have covered access to that hole to my cylinder. I've covered that. I've also covered access to the screws that hold the lock body into the edge of the door. I've covered that as well. The armor front just attaches to the lock tabs itself, covering up the important parts of the lock. That is what an armor front does, and that's specifically why they're designed that way. I could take you for a tour into some old catalogs, and you will see these locks that do not feature armor fronts. Or if you've dealt in commercial hardware, you may have bumped into them, especially if you work in an older city like Chicago. You'll certainly see them. But be mindful. That's the function of an armor front. That's there, and that's by design. Now we move to our template. Now the template shows up for both wood doors and metal door applications. The drawings are not the same. You're going to be missing information on a metal template that you would need for a wood door style template. So be mindful that you'll want to use the proper template. And we have a metal template and we have a wood template. Let's look at the metal template first. Now, they're going to show you the edge of the door. They're going to show you the possible function holes. you'll notice that they're numbered. 1, 4, 2, 3. Okay? Up over here is where you're going to learn what you're drilling. 1, 3, and 4 with a note, drill through hole from 3 to 4 for an L496. Okay? So what they're saying is, on your lock, you need to drill holes 1, 3, and 4. So we're going to have a cylinder on the outside. Then 3 and 4, you're going to drill through the door because they are on the same, they're at the same vertical height and the same back set as well. And I personally find this format of template to be very concise and consolidated when we don't have lots of templates for a different template for every function. You know, generally when I'm looking at something new, I'll take a black magic marker and I'll just X off what I don't have to have. And I'll certainly double check everything prior to drilling, certainly prior to drilling and prior to putting my center punch onto the door. Now, what they're saying here is outside of a left-hand door, which means that this would be the inside of a left-hand door. If you're doing a right-hand door, you're going to flip this around in your mind's eye. And it's also, I think, very valuable for you to have the hardware familiar to you in at least your mind's eye so that you can do a reality check to make sure that the holes that you're drilling make sense to you. You know, if you're going to put, a thumb turn hole below a cylinder and you don't have an occupancy indicator, yeah, something should be telling you that's wrong. There's something wrong about that. And I will very often refer to the function table for the lock, and I'll say to you, okay, there's obviously a cylinder on one side, there's a thumb turn on the inside, and it helps me understand what I'm doing before it's too late. It's hard to cover holes. So they're telling us that we need a 2 and 25/32 times 2, 1 divided by 32 times 25 plus 2 times 2 a 5 9/16 tall preparation for that faceplate. 5 9/16, 1.25 wide. Okay, 3.5 inch is the height of the strike. Now, what's important to note here is that this is different than other mortise locks in that there is no relocation of center line between the latch and the strike. Whereas if you're accustomed to working with mortise locks, you'll certainly know that there's a relocation of center line. So the point is when you're measuring the top of the door to the center of your lock pocket, you know that your adjustment on the frame will be 1/8 of an inch because of a typical 1/8 of an inch gap between the underside of the header and the top of the door. But there is no 3/8 of an inch relocation between the center of the strike and the center of the armor front as there would be on a typical mortise lock. That's what's important to know. Okay. So depending on your function, you'll drill a cylinder hole on one side or the other, or both. You'll drill a thumb turn access on one side or the other side, or both, depending on the hand of the door and the function of the lock, and it's all called out here. What I don't see they're showing us is how deep to make that edge prep. For case and strike dimensions, see template L2. Template L2. Okay, so we came up with that L2 document, and that L2 document is... it's linked to down below in this video, but it's here for us to review. The important thing, what they're saying is our faceplate thickness is right here, 7/32 of an inch. Okay, so that's how deep we're going to need to make our preparation. Forgive me. L496, okay, L909. So 7/32 deep is what will make this preparation from template L2. And as we go over to the steel door template, it's going to be the same concept, but because it's a steel door, they're not including any sort of special instructions as to how you might go in prepping this. Okay, so they're giving you the dimensions by which to achieve the pocket for the case to go into. You know, it's going to be 4 1/4 overall height, obviously 1 inch wide, 4 1/2 inch deep. With a metal door, you don't need to know that information at all, because you need to make sure your lock case fits in with your mounting tabs that are here. Now, when it comes to prepping your door, when it's a wood door or a hollow metal door for that matter, it's important to know that your back set is 2 3/4, as defined right here for this lock set. But back set needs to be carefully defined because it can be interpreted different ways. So what I've drawn here are 4 different edge preps: square, beveled, radius, and rabbited. Well, 2 3/4 is from the edge of the door to the center line of the hole, but it's actually measured from the center of the thickness of the door to the center line. So if you have a square edge door, that dimension is the same on either side. But if you have a beveled edge door, that dimension is not going to be the same on either side. So be mindful that it's measured from the center of the thickness and make your appropriate adjustments, because when you're drilling a hole in your door, you want it to be accurate. And they're also telling you that on the 496, 3 and 4, you're going to drill those through to each other. And if you're measuring on a beveled edge door, okay, and you're going to run that hole all the way through, you're going to be way off. You're going to be way off when you get to the other side of the door. So be mindful of that. It's measured in that way. And that way, back set is not dependent on door thickness. Putting it at the center is what's really nice about back set. Okay, and back set applies to more than just locks. If I were to make a door for you, a Dutch door for you, and you were going to have a Dutch door bolt securing the upper leaf to the lower leaf, I'm going to ask, at what back set do you want the reinforcing for the Dutch door bolt? So it's the same concept as what we're driving at there. Looking at the rest of the template, I don't see anything else that calls out attention. Obviously, drilling nice and clean holes. Once I get my locations placed, I will then take my center punch and I will center punch all of my holes. Because I want my drill bit to find its center point, its location nice and cleanly. Hole saws, if you're doing a metal door, I think work splendidly. A little bit of thread cutting fluid is absolutely recommended. At least I use it. If you're doing a wood door, paddle bits, spade bits, fly bits, whatever you call them, those are fine. They work fine for me. I get the Bosch style, and we're a distributor for Bosch, but they have a couple of wing cutters on the outside and score that door real nice. You want to break the veneer so that you don't tear it out. So however you go about doing that, I've had no problem at all using very inexpensive drill bits for doing that. You could use Forstner bits if you want. I just don't see the need for the added cost of the tooling, and I think it's the wrong hardware for that the wrong tooling for that requirement. Okay, metal door, nothing special really there to notate at all. I don't like when we lay our doors in a shop setting. You know, you've got a sawhorse, then you've got your door flat here, and I've seen lots of people use the top of the door as their shelf, is where they put all the tools. If you're going to do that, that's fine. Get yourself a piece of cardboard and put your sharp tools, when you place them on the door, put them on the cardboard so you don't damage the face of the door or scratch it at all. Just my opinion, to make a nice, clean organized workspace. Okay. Now we're going to move on to accommodating for the longer driver bar for the occupancy indicator. Let's switch back to the camera view and do so. Okay, so as we continue on our little video tour here of our occupancy indicator, you'll recall that we have the requirement of the extended unequally on one side. And if you recall, they include all these different driver bars for different thicknesses of doors. Well, the one driver bar for door thicknesses from 1 5/8 to 1 7/8 is 0.95 inch in length. Okay, and that measures about 0.178 or so. Yeah, 0.178 by 0.178. So it's almost 3/16. So they don't, we needed to ship this order quickly. I could make the custom length cylinders quickly, but getting a custom driver bar from Schlage would have taken, you know, whatever, 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever the case might be. Who knows? Maybe it would take a day. But you know, longer driver bars. So what I did was ordered some 3/16 key stock. Now this key stock is 3/16, and they say it's undersized by about 2 or 3 thousandths. My caliper tells me it's 0.186 by 0.186, so it's about 8 thousandths bigger than the plastic driver bar. Well, it fits into the hub just fine. No problem at all fitting into the hub. Okay, so I can get that to operate. It fits into the occupancy indicator, albeit ever so slightly, you gotta just push it in. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it goes in. It does need to be pushed in. But I don't think there'll be any problem at all with that. Yeah, it fits in. I would like it to be the exact size, but 8.008, not going to be an issue. No, forgive me, 0.008. 8 thousandths, 0.008. So what I've done is I've measured on my key stock where I want to cut this. It's going to be 1.95 inch. I'm going to confirm my dimension in terms of the line that I have marked on the material. Yeah, it's fine. There's a 1/4 inch of play, really. You know, 1/8 of an inch plus or minus of where I've got that line scored. So now we're going to switch to another camera view, and we're going to cut this material. Let's just keep this project moving along. Okay, so we're going to place our key stock down into our vise. And because it's so small, I'm not really very concerned about not in love with that. Huh? Getting it started is okay, I'm not thrilled with that blade that's in there, so we're going to swap that out. It's unclear to me what this has loaded in it. It looks to be very fine, but realistically not fine enough. We'll see. Just a typical hacksaw, a relatively light duty frame. You could certainly spend a lot more money on hacksaw frames. Oh yeah. Yep. I'm not sure what blade this is, but this is... I don't know what that is. And because there's, you know, a little bit of play in terms of the length, I'm not overly concerned about being to the 100th of an inch accurate. Not see that coming. So pretty good, you know, cut that's on there. I'm going to take my file and I'm going to dress that off a little bit. A nice set of machinist's files here that I like to use. Just in case they put the cut end down into the plastic occupancy indicator. Like to have that a bit dressed off. Okay, now that'll certainly fit into our lock body, both sides. That's no problem. That fits in well. Now our occupancy indicator. That fits in perfectly that size. And good on the other side. Small amount of scoring that's happening. I can feel it. So just going to dress these ends off. Okay, it feels pretty smooth. Yeah. I'm going to say that we're going to have no problem with that at all. Okay. So now let's go ahead and make our second. Oh, before we do that, we're looking for 1.95, and yeah, our caliper tells us you know 1.947. So we're good. We're good with that size. Now let's do one more, except this time I'm going to cut from the other clean end, the other factory original end. using a very scientific method of marking this off, but for our purposes, we don't need to be scientific. Then what I'll do is I'll look at my mark and I'll know where to place the hacksaw in relationship to the mark. I find it always a good idea to put your tools back after every single use. That keeps them from getting damaged, knocked down, or pushed off the table, otherwise rendered inoperative. Caliper is definitely a tool that doesn't tolerate bouncing, that I have found. Yeah. Bit of twist on that blade. You don't want to have the blade not radially even to the frame. That's what accounts for a poor cut. Also putting too much pressure. Wanted to minimize as best as I could the amount of filing necessary, but I'm going to clean up the ends. Have a small amount of overhang of material here. I could just be putting this on my wire wheel. Quite frankly, that would certainly do it. But I'm only doing 2 of them. There are 2 locks on this order. You probably have surmised that. Okay, so it fits into our lock case. That fits nice. Both ends. That I expect. It's really the occupancy indicator. It has a smaller amount of tolerance. The cut end fits in just fine. The factory end fits in fine. That can stand to have a little more removed. And this piece of 3/16 key stock was literally $1.05. So now we have 2 longer drivers. That's the factory original driver alongside the driver that's 1 inch longer. So there we go. Okay, now let's bring this video to conclusion and let's go from there. Okay, so as we now conclude this video, we've got our custom cylinder, 1 inch longer than standard. We have our occupancy indicator with our 1 inch longer than standard spindle. Stick all that right in through there. And we're going to be in really good shape with this. I'm going to thread that in, that cylinder. And I'm not going to cross thread it. Which I've never done in 30 years. I've never cross-threaded a mortise lock. I know that people have, and you can buy. We can sell you the tap. We can sell you the tap for retapping the hole. But kind of the trick that I use, I'll rotate it counterclockwise. There we go. Until it seats, and it goes right in. And there's no doubt that it will. Okay. There's our look. Our thing is we really need to have an 1 7/8 from our occupancy indicator to the center line of our lock body, and we've easily got that. I can thread that in a little bit more. 7/8 from the center of the lock body. 7/8 is 1/2 inch and 3/4. 7/8 to what would be normally the outside of the door, plus our 1 inch applied material. So we get to 1 7/8. It'll be no problem at all. I could probably rotate all that in ever so slightly more. Another 2 or 3 revolutions, and it's going to work. Well, actually, I would have to because the cylinder's not all the way in yet. And what I'm looking at is the inside of the mortise case, and I can see my cam is in the proper position. 1 7/8 to the center of the mortise body. Yeah, we're basically right there. A little bit further, I suppose. And that's really it. Now let's test. So when I hit the thumb turn on the inside, I should be occupying and unoccupying. Okay. As I rotate the lock, cylinder, I don't have that cylinder tightened down. Occupied. Yep, there you go. Great, so this is a success. Admittedly, it's not necessarily something that I would say is recommended that you go about creating your own piece parts to get a lock to suit your requirements. But at the end of the day, I had a very old customer of mine talk about lead times, and he basically said Chicago wasn't built on an 8-week lead time. Meaning, life is hectic. We need to move quickly. And, cutting a piece of 3/16 key stock, drilling and tapping a couple of holes, this problem is solved. And it's perfect. And, don't take this wrong, but the client's none the wiser. Meaning, the old saying, I don't need to know how the hot dog is made. They're not going to, worry about why that cylinder extension looks the way it does. We don't have 8 weeks. A 2 1/4 inch custom cylinder from the manufacturer is an expensive proposition, very expensive, and a lead time. And quite frankly, I would like to think that Schlage would like to spend their time making, L460 cases, rather than getting into custom length cylinders, even though they do a great job at it. So, in conclusion, let's switch to the screen view, and get close to wrapping this up. Now back at our screen view, and this is the lock that we're working on. Okay, what I wanted to show you was the link to the manufacturer's page as seen here. And this page is very important. It's very handy because this page is the repository of all things important encyclopedic document related from Schlage. Okay, it's where we put all the important reference manuals and whatnot. And in no particular order. The service manual, we've gone over that. Well, imagine a 1,000-page version of that with every lock parts manual that is published is here. Master Template Index. Okay, that's also a large unit, large resource. Cylinders and Key Blanks Quick Reference Guide. That is a personal favorite of mine because I seem to always forget what the part number is you know, for the, you know, conventional control key. I seem to always forget it's a 35056. Well, that part number is just a click away for me. Okay. Also on the manufacturer's page will be not only all of the Schlage products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog, several service manuals, such as the Everest Cylinder Service Manual, the Primus Cylinder Service Manual, the Schlage Key Bitting Specifications. If you do any locksmithing type of work, this is a handy document to have access to, because this would be a depth and spacing chart. For fun, we have some archival catalogs. If you bump into wafer locks at all, well, here's the Schlage wafer lock manual. I haven't seen a wafer lock in person in probably 20 years, although interestingly enough, I saw one in a movie, a classic 80s movie about the young kid, his girlfriend, and his best buddy taking a day off of school. And at the end, the principal, when confronting the our hero in the movie, you know, was asking him if he was looking for this, which was the key to the house, and it was a wafer key in the first shot that he showed him. And I do understand that wafer locks are actually incredibly common in not only the ski resort towns, you know, in your Vermont area. I was speaking to a locksmith there, but in South America, apparently the wafer lock is all the rage. Don't know why. I am not aware that Schlage even still manufactures these. They might have a plant in Mexico or South America, and they might pump out wafer locks. You want to see what Schlage did in 1972? There's the catalog. There's a 1982 catalog. I have other catalogs. I have mid-century stuff. It's just not been scanned and uploaded yet. So really helpful information on this page. Let's finally wrap up this video on camera. Now, I am quite partial to Schlage, and it's probably because I'm most familiar with their part numbers. It's just the lock line that I was introduced to first or initially in my career. So I, you know, very early on internalized a lot of part numbers. That's subjective. Objectively, I can tell you that their technical support department is exceptional. 100% of the time, they will acknowledge and they will answer the question, because that Schlage price list, that Schlage catalog, is not the one that existed in 1990. It has grown legs, so to speak. It's a far more daunting document. And even though I'm experienced with how Schlage lays things out, they have continued to evolve their product line to react to the changing markets, that occasionally I need to reach out and ask them something. It's generally technical in nature, but sometimes I need assistance on pricing something that is not clear or obvious in the catalog, but that's a rare instance. There's a lady at the factory that is exceptional with expert technical support, and to her I say thank you very much. Schlage is under the umbrella of Allegion. Her sister companies would be in addition to Schlage, of course, there would be LCN, Von Duprin, there would be Glenn Johnson, there would be Doramatic, and Falcon, and Zero, and Ives, and others. They have a full complement of material to provide everything on the job. If you're considering an order of lock sets, I would consider Schlage. I don't think you could say that they'd be the cheapest or the least expensive. But generally what you find with Schlage is that good technical support and service, but also availability of not only the published documentation of the parts, but access to those parts. This client with these locks will last you could take these locks out of the box in 1,000 years and they're still going to work. So it's quite a durable piece of equipment. Having access to keep that lock faithfully working for you is crucial, and Schlage does that very well. If you have any questions on our L496 that we have kind of hijacked to operate in a way that it wasn't intended to outside of the box, or any other Schlage product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.